Welcome to Monday. It's December 1st, 2025, your day with a podcast brought to you by the Advocates Injury Attorneys. If you've been injured in an accident, don't face it alone. Get an experienced local Wyoming attorney on your side. Free consultations at wyomingadvocates.com or call 307-800-1952. You deserve an advocate. Yes, it is the first day of meteorological winter. You may say, what is that? Well, if you look at temperatures, if you look at precipitation, if you look at when things usually become winter, it's around this date instead of astronomical winter, which usually happens on that 21st, 22nd of December. So the change in the weather kind of lining up with that first meteorological day of winter here today and what we saw over the weekend. It's going to be chilly, but it's not going to be as cold today and into tomorrow. But as you can see there in that beautiful photo along the North Platte River near Douglas, very frosty conditions in many areas here over the last few days. Now we have another system coming in from the northwest that will spread some snow into the high country during the day tomorrow, then the high country and some on the plains, not a lot, as we get into the day on Wednesday. And this will reinforce the cold air and push it on through. This next system tomorrow and Wednesday looks extremely similar to the last couple. Then we're going to see a northwest flow pattern. We mentioned this Friday. Northwest flow aloft is going to be a very good producer of snow in the northern Rockies, the mountains. It's not a good pattern for the plains, but the high country is going to be poised late this week and into the weekend to pick up some good snow, especially the far northern Rockies and the extreme central northern Rockies, and we'll show you where. Now, out ahead of the change in the weather late last week, we had some beautiful cloud photos across the region. There's the Arctic front pushing into the plains late Friday afternoon and evening. And ahead of that, strong winds aloft, giving us some Kelvin-Helmholtz wave clouds down near Fountain, Colorado. And a beautiful sunset there in the Leadville area. Then another Jan Curtis time lapse as the Arctic front came down I-25 into southern Wyoming and northern Colorado overnight Friday. The time lapse looks like this, and you can see the snow, the low clouds moving in. And what you'll want to notice here, as temperatures go from 57 degrees during the day to down into the single digits by morning, you start to see light pillars show up there. There you can see the light pillars as the ice crystals in the Arctic air causing those light pillars to form. And we're into that time of year now where you're going to start to see that. Here's a shot of 7 inches of snow from Janesville, Iowa. That Midwestern storm. Got an email later from Denise that said she was up to 13 inches and still snowing. And that's certainly where the deeper snows were. Satellite photos this morning show not a lot in the west. Now the patches of blue here are low clouds, areas of fog, and also just some very cold air all across the region. But there's a bit of a gap in the action, but you can see some moisture out ahead of the next wave here coming down from the west coast of British Columbia, and here it is. This wave is going to be working its way south and east right behind the wave that came through yesterday. Notice we have kind of like spokes on a wheel around this Hudson Bay low, and you'll get this. You'll have these small systems rotate around the main vortex of cold here, and that's what we're seeing here on the edges. You see how they're equally spaced apart almost? So this next spoke is going to come in like this. Like the last two, there's not a lot of moisture to work with. But from today into Wednesday, the system slides into Utah. Since there's not a lot of moisture with it, we're not going to see a lot of snow, but we're going to get a little bit of it. And there will be another push of Arctic air coming down the eastern slopes of the Rockies during the day Wednesday, sending temperatures downward again. So this is what the moisture looks like with this next wave tomorrow and Wednesday. It looks very similar to basically what happened yesterday and with the system on Friday. You're going to see another good shot of snow in Montana. You're going to see a good shot of snow in the mountains of Colorado and the mountains of Wyoming. And you can see there are some snows over the lower elevations, but this is just not the type of pattern that's going to produce a lot of snow on the plains, but it will produce just enough if you're traveling tomorrow and Wednesday for snow over the mountain passes and a little bit of slickness on some roads and highways across the lower elevations, especially across Montana, northern Wyoming there along Interstate 90, as you can see that, into South Dakota as well. Then certainly I-80 and I-70 across the Colorado high country, and there's the output of snow. So nothing really big, but kind of reinforcing the cold and putting a little more snow on the ground in some areas. Then as we get into Friday, we're going to see another wave come down the pike. And basically, same thing here, spokes on the wheel rotating around the Hudson Bay low. So this next spoke comes in, but notice the tight gradient of the black lines here forming all the way into the Pacific. So what we're getting are strong winds aloft coming off the Pacific over the water into the Pacific Northwest and the Northern Rockies. And as the strengthening flow aloft with winds aloft cranks up over that water, it just becomes a transport for Pacific air to come into the Northern Rockies, and the air aloft is colder coming in to the region. That flow of air, northwest to southeast, is upslope for areas along and west of the Continental Divide as that air is forced off the Pacific and into the mountains of British Columbia, the Pacific Northwest, and the Northern Rockies. And this pattern goes from Friday all the way into Sunday morning. That strong winds aloft over the water into the Northern Rockies, and the air aloft is cold. So when we look at the winds aloft, this is from Friday through the Monday after, so it's a week from today. So at the end of the week, through the weekend, you see the brighter colors there from the green to the yellows to the red colors there. That means winds aloft are coming in strongly off the water, and there's cold, moist air getting driven into the Northern Rockies. And there's your moisture. If you look at the precipitable water from Friday through Monday, you can see a lot of green and a lot of blue from the Pacific Northwest into the Northern Rockies. The output of the snow looks like this, and this is kind of a classic pattern you see in northwest flow. If you look at where the heavier moisture is, it lines up basically northwest to the southeast into the major mountain ranges. So the mountains of northern Colorado and southern Wyoming are last in line. And if you look carefully, you can see that the amount of precipitation decreases as it heads southeast. Well, that's because these mountains catch the brunt of it. You get another one, you get another range, then you get the last range. But certainly the closer you are to the Pacific makes sense, the more moisture you're going to get. But historically, this is the type of pattern that does really well in those areas I just circled in terms of the major mountain ranges, the bighorns as well. So this is the pattern you want to see if you're a skier and a snowmobiler, because you're going to get into some really good snow into the ski areas into this area. But notice south of I-70 here, that's not a good flow pattern, south of I-70. For the mountains of southern Colorado and southern Utah, you want more of a westerly or southwesterly flow for those mountains. But for the mountains of the Pacific Northwest, Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming, northwest flow is the most conducive. You notice there are some streaks of snow showers reaching the plains and overrunning snow up here in the Dakotas and eastern Montana. Again, it's not going to be a lot. So this is one of those situations where it gets snowy in the mountains, but you're not shoveling much on the plains. And there you can see some impressive snow totals at the end of this week into Monday, the following Monday from today. Don't forget our regional travel forecast, updated Monday through Fridays around 3 p.m. Mountain Time. Have yourself a good Monday. We'll see you tomorrow.